is the national. And, well, the details around his commitment and the commitment of the party leads towards getting things right continues. As you already know, the likes of parties interested in seeing the end of it, the judgment of it. Judgment this time around, meaning when they do approach the Supreme Court, it's final. And there's a judgment that everybody has to fall in line with and take forward that, well, this is what there is. For 12, the presidential election petition tribunal did provide perspective to various prayers that were filed before them to explain why this, that, and certain conditions do meet or do not follow through with other parties or candidates of such a party, affects the APC. But this morning, in provide perspective for the Labour Party, I'm joined, Mr. Onifade is with me here, head of media, Labour Party, as presidential campaign, and is with me this very morning in the studio. Good morning to you, sir, to have you joining.
Thank you very much, Femi. Good morning, everyone at home.
All right, for those who want to watch, you can to our Facebook page. We're streaming live at this time, also on YouTube. So feel free to go on and watch how this conversation unfolds. Lots of things are part of the build-up to PEPT's campaign. You've worked closely with candidates of the Labour Party. You've worked closely with the vice presidential candidate of the party. And it's of interest that people momentum around represents, essentially. And because of that, there's a strong system of bias in which one would say your candidates have excelled on compared to other candidates. And one would wonder if, based on that, that was also part of the reasons why when you did put up appeals before the court to say won the election, what did you have in mind?
Well, like you said, this was the first time that you will have a kind of configuration had in terms of the candidates since 1999. Some will say in the history of democracy in Nigeria, that's not correct. In the Second Republic, you had NPN, you had UP, you had NPP. They were equally formidable. You even had GMP. But since 1999, this is when you have more than a two-horse race. So it's a different kind of election, which also came with a kind of energy. And then it went on the climax only on presidential election day. It became anticlimactic. The thing was just punctured. And this is the national mood. This is just the way that majority of Nigerians felt. They felt they were shortchanged, for sure. So we approached the court. We said, okay, this is what happened. The election was not conducted as promised. At least the outcome wasn't as we were promised. So we put that before the court. We told them these candidates, the candidates that you eventually declared, they were not qualified to run in the first place for a number of reasons.
Okay.
I'll put all the three parties together. Double nomination. That the vice presidential candidate of APC was carrying 2 tickets. At the time he was nominated for that position. Then the main candidate himself had many issues, that of dual nationality, that of forgery of certificates, forfeiture of substantial amount for a criminal activity. Obviously criminal activity, because narcotic trafficking is criminal everywhere, except now in Nigeria post presidential election petition court. So and that he did not score 25% in the FCT as required, and so on and so forth. We put all these things down. We back them up, only for the court to now say they all lacked merit.
Why do you think they say they lack merit? Because that's going to be the bane of my argument.
You know, that remains to be. I mean, the court itself needs to come clean. But the good thing about it is just a court of the first instance in this respect. We are still going to
the Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court. You see, I mean, take for instance, there are many grounds that they gave. We, Labour Party, brought 13 witnesses. They rejected 10 of those witnesses, 10 out of 13.
On what grounds?
They said that their testimonies were not front-loaded, which is to say that you ought to have obtained their testimony in a written form and filed it with your case at the beginning of the case. But tell you what, these 10 people that they are talking about are actually subpoenaed witnesses. What is a subpoena witness? You had to ask the court to force them to come.
To make an appearance.
They were
not
reluctant.
They were not pro you in the first place. So
somebody who was reluctant in the first place, will he give you his testimony to go and front load? So we had to approach the court to force them to come. People will be forced to come. You say you didn't front load, so we discountenance everything that they have brought.
Mr. Onifade, let me go back. I mean, I like the fact that you brought forward, because a lot of people question that maybe the prayers were not properly presented before the courts, or the terms, the conditions, and perspective that they were presented before the courts. You just mentioned front loaded, for example. I mean, a case such as this, you have 13 people who were to appear as witnesses for you. 10 of them are going in under subpoena, and subpoena means that essentially you can't even tell what they will testify. They can only testify based on truth and the fact that they swore that they're telling the truth, but not necessarily to speak on behalf or for a Labour Party in this instance.
We had to pay the court to force them to come. That's what subpoena is.
Yes, I do know. Force them to come.
Yes.
But
the people that you reluctant witnesses, you are now saying you didn't bring their statement up front.
Why
if they cooperated, would we have had to subpoena them?
Would you think it's strategic to base your case based on witnesses? I'm just talking about the witness part now. 10 of 13 of the people who were supposed to testify on behalf of Labour Party are people who were there under the forceful position of the court. Do you think that was strategic?
Well, if you look at it, so many other, at the beginning of this case, a lot of things rested on INEC, and INEC was hedging, was dodging, was prevaricating, doing all kinds of things, frustrating our case to the knowledge of the court. But the court decided not to protect us at that point in time.
Protect you from what? From INEC?
Yes, I mean, to get the INEC to do the needful.
What were the needful? Because INEC, there was a part of the case, I mean, before the tribunal, I remember about getting access to evidence that you were going to use. Eventually, the court agreed, and I presume the Labour Party also agreed to the fact that, it's the backup server that the Labour Party was going to use. Did you need protection from that, or you were very in an agreeable position with what they offered?
No, I mean, the court gave us the leeway to approach INEC and collect these documents. We send lawyers nationwide. And then you will get to these states and they will tell you, no, we are not going to give you unless the headquarters gave us the go-ahead. And the headquarters never gave them the go-ahead. So we were not able to get many of these documents. In any case, ones that we were able to get...
Did you communicate to the court back to tell INEC that I was not complying?
Oh, sure. Now, they were now giving piecemeal. Throughout the time that we had, they were frustrated. 2 days, end of the 10 days, we had to argue our case. The second to the last day, somebody now came and said, yes, we should not have come to the headquarters to collect it. We've been to the states. And then at that time, the judge said, you should have just asked us, all those kinds of things. So it was a deliberate thing. This was an INEC thing. And I'm sorry to say, the ambience in court itself show that
It's calculated justice. Would that be a phrase?
No. It's judgment, not justice.
Oh, you think it's judgment that
What took place in court was judgment, not
Final.
justice.
It's final. There's a lot of people who are claiming that it's judgment. And well, judgment means, okay, at this point, so justice would go forward. Let me also take you on a little bit about some other filing and prayers you had. And before we start talking about the up to the Supreme Court as well. Part of the other filing that you also had to do with the candidates of the APC, that's the leading candidate, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, president at this time. And I do remember a same filing had been around his person in the past, especially during his tenure as a governor, around issue of narcotics and all of that. It's not the first time it has come, not even during an election, but that around, he has a past around narcotics. And there are talks about for future. And I know a lot of future deals in the United States, and I'm glad you're one of my favorites when it comes to journalism. A lot of future deals when it happens in the United States it has with the fact that there's either a closed case ceiling where you can't do much of the details of that, and sometimes the people involved themselves, they have their records sealed or records expunged, essentially, to say this never happened because you pointed the right direction. And I'm not too sure Ahmed Tinubu ever gave up that position, say, well, it never happened, but for future deal did happen. So I was wondering, because at some point in time, there was this part. If you look into his past, something from there could not forward as part of this case. That's on one hand. There was also issue of his certification, where he's from. There was, growing up, remember, there was also the talks about whether he attended university in Canada, the way we have Unilag and Lasuation.
Yeah.
That was in the early 2000s. And they said, he attended, I'm trying to remember the name of the university now.
No, it was actually University of Chicago.
Chicago.
Yes, he first claimed to have attended University of Chicago.
Yeah, and then he went on to State.
He walked it back and became Chicago State University,
which the Chicago State University is even more popular than University of Chicago in this instance. And I'm touching on this because I remember this had happened before, and there were court judgments around this. I would wonder, why would Labour Party incline towards something that almost carefully had been settled and use it as a base, formulate an important case, it's a legal case, an electoral case format, because if the court visited such a case before, it's likely the current court would look into what were the conditions that were used in settling that. Never
actually said that this was settled in the past. Said was that, they got a letter from the American embassy to the effect written to the then Inspector General of Police.
But that was
case.
That was this year.
No. That was.
The filing of that, the knowing about that letter, U.S. letter, was this year.
Yeah, but the letter was written to, I think, Tafa Balogun at that point.
Yeah, good. So doesn't that make it look like something to use in court?
It shouldn't have settled it. American embassy is not a court of law. That's an official of American embassy writes that this doesn't have a case. That's not a court. That's bureaucrat. It's a diplomat doing the job of a court. That
also means that the United States as a country would have normally said, if the embassy can write it.
No, who in the United States?
The embassy, the United States.
What the president of Nigeria or America can do. A magistrate can pronounce you not guilty of something, and that clears you.
Yes.
The president of Nigeria cannot you not guilty because it's not. So if you are a diplomat who is just an agent of president, even your president cannot somebody of a legal issue. It's not
so a legal issue in which the union itself described as a forfeiture case, which the detailing around this case remains sketchy, and I assume that that's part of the thing.
No, we keep talking about forfeiture. Forfeiture over what? It is clear in that document over narcotics tracking. And look. In court, Senator Opeyemi Bamidele, the sole witness that they brought, he said he practiced law in America and in Nigeria. He tendered that document. And so in this document that you have tendered, did you see the word narcotic trafficking? He said yes. Is narcotic trafficking an offense or not? Of course, it is an offense under any jurisdiction.
True.
So are the things that happened in court, and the judges are now pretending as if these things done in court.
I think when U.S. courts, you have the prosecuting arm of the U.S. court say, oh, okay, we're giving up on this case, we're not pushing. It doesn't necessarily mean it didn't happen.
Because the person, the accused, was in their jurisdiction to be tried at that time. And it would be futile to be trying to get to come to trial.
So they
instead of, sitting air over bringing this man to court, just grab what is available. Which money? That was the forfeiture. Could you have been punished? Which law on earth punishes you if you haven't offended? Which law on earth punishes you?
Okay. After the break, I'm going to push out here, head of media, Labour presidential candidate further now. Let's talk about what happens next, right? What happens next? I was listening to PB give his own speech. It was very level-headed speech about his position on what should happen next, and they're approaching the Supreme Court. Also, the Labour chairman talks about how obedient is the nickname of the Labour Party, and the candidate of Obi Dati. The stay calm, justice will be served. We'll look at how that will be. What will make the process different from the next stage? With us, we'll be back.
Informative and stimulating talk.
Something new is about to hit your imagination up.
This is Nigeria in Nigeria.
Nothing breaks the news like the news. Trust me, I can prove it. Do it every morning on Morning Crossfire, 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Nigeria Info 95.1. I'm Vidi Amede. Join the biggest conversation around the national politics day in a way that is trustworthy, full of passion, and yes, covers the biggest politics and the stories that matter to you. See, you have all the reasons to find out what's going on in the area and think it differently. Let's talk. That's the way to go, even this morning.
Scholarship to support your study.
Lancaster University, Ghana, with a world-class education.
Nothing breaks the news like the news. Trust me, I prove it. I do it every morning on Morning Crossfire, 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Nigeria Info 95.1 and Effizy Amede. Join the biggest conversation around the national politics every day in a way that's full of passion and yes, covers the biggest politics and stories that matter to you. See, you have all the reasons to find out what's going on in Nigeria and then get differently. Let's talk. That's the way to go, even this morning.
This is Nigeria Info. Nigeria Info. This is Nigeria Info. This is Nigeria Info. 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 Nigeria Info.
info.
This is Nigeria in
It's now 8:38 Nigerian time, Tuesday morning. The head of media presidential campaign is surely with us this very morning. It's Onifade, it's Labour Party. And yes, he's been providing perspective, review of the PEPT, the special election petitions outcome this very morning. Let's take a step forward. What's up to the show this very morning?
Thank you.
Let's take a step forward. So, Peter Obi, who's the president of Labour Party, the chairman of the party as well, provided their own speeches, address, and analysts have provided perspective to what should happen next. One of the comments I did here is that they just had 12 hours, saying that it was a very long judgment, and in reasoning and justification for the steps and the decisions at that level. And the document from that court need to be studied before being read to the Supreme Court. Do you think there's enough time to do that?
The lawyers are doing what they need to do. The lawyers do, but some of these things are pretty commonsensical.
Okay.
Some of them are constitutional issues, like the issue of 25% in FCT.
Tell us about that. What's your perspective?
Issues have been dealt with over and over. Then the president, a Supreme Court judgment to the effect that 25% in FCT is mandatory for you to be declared as president of Nigeria in an election.
Do you remember the reference?
Perfect.
Do you remember the reference?
Yes, in Buhari for society.
Obasanjo did not win.
And the court said no, he didn't have to win. All he had to win was 25%, which he did. So that one is clear. So, but it's like this court just rewrote the constitution and said, oh, FCT doesn't have a special status. Excuse me. FCT has a special status. FCT, if it's not in the constitution, wherever they to equate FCT to a state, the constitution will say that you treat it as if it were a state for that purpose, not for all purposes. Okay, look at the state of FCT. The FCT doesn't have a house of assembly. The president is the governor of FCT. Every state in Nigeria is governed by the FCT. The minister is just an agent of the governor. FCT has only one senator. All states have 3 senators. So how are you saying the status of FCT is not sure? Of course it is special. But if you're saying that, okay, the FCT voter shouldn't be more important than the voter in other states, unfortunately, our constitution is perfect. But as it is, this is what we have. Special status, FCT. It may be one of the issues within our constitution.
You just said if every time the constitution needs the FCT or to equate it with other states, it's clearly stated that. But under the electoral law, all it did say was and 5% of the FCT, which essentially means that it's an and situation. Whatever has happened in the other state, in addition to that condition, is the FCT, which brings...
Why not just say 2/3 of 37 states?
Because we have 36 states.
Yeah, so 36 states, which means that 2/3 applied to 36 states. You see, for me personally, it fills me with a sense of déjà vu. I voted the first time in 1979, and then this issue of 12 2/3. We had 19 states at that time. What is 2/3 of 10? And we said 12 2/3 of a state.
Yes, 12 of 19.
12 2/3. Is that 2/3 of a state?
Of a prime number, as a fact.
We went through all of it, only for us to get a judicial system. At the end, they said that case should not be cited as precedent by future courts. They were that ashamed of judgment in 1979 that it must not be cited as precedent. We are back to that same spot. Progress.
It gives you reason to tell you there are parts of the law that will be reviewed. And of course, we had the electoral review last year under former President Buhari before he stepped away in leading. And I'll go back to this issue of the FCT by asking you one thing. I'm thinking of it now. Your candidate won in the T, but number not going.
Well,
it's thought that last report.
You part of what we took to the court. But look, the score you were given wasn't our actual score.
Does that include Lagos State?
We picked, Lagos State, PDP people already that we scored more than was given us in Lagos State. But talking about what we brought to the court, we brought the actual calculation of results in Rivers and in Benue to court. Threw that away.
Why?
for what? Because tendered by one of the 10 witnesses that they discountenanced. This is an issue.
But we do
what
know
they did was meant not justice, and the chief justice of the federation.
But would you
brought to the beginning of the work of the tribunals, not just this one. He said they should deal with the justice case, not these technicalities. But ended up with technicalities.
But would you know technicalities is what at times the Nigerian law bases its clarity on to say, oh, this is how we have that decision.
Unfortunately,
when we go to the Supreme Court, and in the Supreme Court, I know that it's a little bit of the reasonability of the law that is applied by the Supreme Court judges, meaning they look at the law and say this is what works best for the nation at large.
At that level, but not at tribunal level. At tribunal level, they were trying to rewrite the constitution the way they want it to be.
They backed up their reasoning with every law could possibly explain why they decided on what they decided.
Look where it was convenient for them.
Where is it not convenient for them?
Wherever it is convenient for them, even the testimony of the witnesses that they discountenance. They were citing those. Even after they said we have discountenanced, if it was convenient for them, they go there.
Can witnesses provide evidence? I strongly understand that in law, whoever is not being in charge, whoever is the respondent or is prosecuting, anyone that provides evidence or exhibiting this to say, oh, this is why this is. Why is the witness providing some material for a law court?
Well, I mean, look, the point is, you give your witness statement and you testify to it, you're cross-examined.
Based on that?
Yes, so all they just did was crash all those. Except when they needed to bear down on some of these witnesses. You already said this was of no value to you. Why were you going to them? You know, you need to be in court that day. You saw a lot of hearings and just hostility, as if it's a crime to come to court. You find justices behaving as if they were INEC lawyers. Honestly, INEC lawyers didn't do much for as those justices did. I mean, you find inbred language in court. You want us to go to the marketplace to look for evidences for you. You have the temerity and audacity. They came down on EU report was worse than the paper upon which it is going to come on.
Unfortunately,
at that level.
Unfortunately, judges and I say judges all over the world get to choose language in their own law courts.
Yeah.
No matter how convenient we may feel about it or sentimental we may feel about it. Sometimes it looks like they're on one side or the other. But I'm not talking about their judgment, but the sentiment of their language. They get to choose it. Is their law court. It's one of the reasons they kick out the journalists most times.
Talking about a language. Let me ask you a question.
Yes, I'm with you, sir.
Why are we in all of this mess concerning the 2023 presidential election? And the answer is INEC lived beyond its promise. INEC promised so much and delivered so little. INEC was in all of this. INEC came out squeaky clean from that tribunal. No blames at all. Instead, it is abusing the
court process or time.
Every
abuse
those
of
who
court
brought
process.
the parties, all those who brought the case to complain, abuse them. They abuse their witnesses. They abuse their lawyers.
And there was
not one negative word said against INEC. But INEC is behind the whole of this mess. INEC out clean. You didn't even say, but INEC. You said, okay, I mean, INEC didn't live by its word.
And they didn't have to transmit the results. I mean,
they didn't have to transmit it.
Yeah.
They didn't even say, you INEC.
But as
you ought not, since you knew you couldn't deliver this, why did you promise it? Now don't promise it. At least say something, and they never did.
But you do know a lot of times it comes down to what's in the electoral law, what they're looking at, which is to produce the result or get the result as INEC deemed fit. I mean, I'm just paraphrasing, but that's a little bit of how the language is structured. And it's believed that the judges will not have been to all the INEC chairman's views because that's the only way they can observe a measure of neutrality.
It was part
he admissible?
It was admitted with witnesses. We brought people from China, brought people from AIT, Rice TV, and we did all those things. They saw it, but those were part of the things that they were discountenancing.
Because looking at just the electoral law, which says INEC deemed fit to produce the results, or share the results, if I would say. That's me paraphrasing.
That's what they chose to do. I'm just telling you,
Could they
it
have
is
looked
not
beyond
because they didn't put these evidences before them. They chose not to the evidences.
Let's bring up some energy to the Supreme Court. We have just about 3 minutes to go.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts? I mean, it's not me trying to box you in. What's your thoughts on what happens next, especially what you will be appealing in the Supreme Court as Labour Party, and of course, it will be as one of the key figures in this?
Well, we are expecting that Supreme Court will look at the entire gamut of things. The Chief Justice of the Federation has said, address the substantial justice, the justice of this case, and not technicality. We have had is just all technicalities.
Okay.
We expect the Supreme Court to look at its own precedent in the case of Mohamed Abacha,
yes,
where they say that forfeiture is punishment for a crime. That one is there. In the case of Obasanjo and Buhari, where the Supreme Court itself says that had to score 25% PFCT. And we expect the Supreme Court to also address the behavior of these justices. How they arrived at all this. We expect, for instance, the case of the forfeiture.
Yes.
131.
The number beats me now.
Well, I mean, it is clear where the Constitution says you cannot contest if you are guilty of offenses of dishonesty and fraud, whatever name called. Is money laundering, not fraud by any other name.
But he was not convicted.
This is the law.
But was he convicted?
If you also look at it, it was just because he was not available to be convicted. He was no longer in that jurisdiction.
But baseline is that the law would only see what was decided by another, which is convicted or not convicted, not the conditions of him being available or not to be convicted.
But it was. Who punishes you if you are not guilty of something? By whatever technicality. He punished. Can anybody punish you for not having done something? This is a great offense. That is why, okay, look at the picture of the G20 meeting where our president was standing alone to talk to him.
That's all about perspective. You and I know that it's all about perspective, not about who is been to.
No, I mean, people will be polite to you.
That's his first visit to the G20.
If you become president of a country, you have worked your way out, you have sacrificed it well. When you get position in life, you don't want to be dealing with a former narcotic trafficker.
But that's based on perspective. And I would think that not because I'm trying to protect him as a president. It's all based on perspective. There could have been tea, cheering, jumping all over in the room. There are no cameras to prove that. And when it's for photographs, it's different. So there's no proof to say that it was abandoned.
In those days, people will always be after the president of Nigeria.
But this is sorry, just go on for a moment. Yeah,
I was a reporter covering events for Nigeria. As ordinary reporters, we will get to important conferences. Let's say in Addis Ababa, Kofi Annan was already in the hall. They were waiting for me, waiting for NTA because Nigeria should be in the room. But no longer like that.
Mr. Diran, Onifade, I say a big thank you to you at this point. We wish you with the Supreme Court appeal that you're filing. Thank you for your time this very morning. Stay with us right here now during. We'll be back with more after now.
This is Nigeria Info. This is Nigeria Info.